The wind caught the flap of my tarp roof and snapped it like a shot. I was halfway down the slope from the bridge, soaked through my canvas jacket, when I heard the tires scream. Not the kind of squeal from braking. This was metal on metal, the hollow, sharp whine of something already out of control. Then came the pop of a guardrail bolt giving out, that awful crunch of steel folding into itself, and finally, the splash that didn't come. That's what made me run. Quick note before we jump in. Drop a comment with the city or country you're listening from. It helps us see where everyone's tuning in and plan the best time for new stories. Thanks for watching Revenge by Frank. All right, let's get started. My name's Colin Perry. I'm 55, and most days, I keep to the woods outside of Ridge Lake, Kentucky, near the Old County Bridge, and a trail that hasn't seen a parks crew in years unless you count me. People laugh and call me the caretaker, like it's some joke. Truth is, I live in a plywood hut about 2 minutes from the creek, and I check those planks every day before someone's kid comes jogging through and lands face first in a rot patch. I used to be a surgeon. Now I pull branches off the trail before sunrise and fish beer cans out of the creek when I find them wedged in rock. I don't mind the quiet out here. What I mind is when the quiet starts talking back. Scarlett Nelson runs the post window inside the Ridge Lake Cooperative store. She acts like she hates everyone, but she still passes me yesterday's coffee in a thermos like she's tossing out garbage. It's not, and she knows I know. A few months ago, she looked at my hands and said, "Those aren't a drunk's hands." I just shrugged and told her I earned my scars the hard way. That was enough for her. The storm rolled in hard that evening. One of those sideways Kentucky rains that claws under your collar and drips cold down your back. I was doing my usual walk across the bridge, checking bolts and joists before the water got high. The planks moaned like they always do, but nothing sounded urgent. Wind whipped up whitecaps on the creek. I ducked under the span just to listen to it all crash together. The thump of water on rock, the groan of wet wood, the kind of noise that clears your head whether you want it or not. People in town think I live out here because I hate them. Truth is, I just don't want to see the way their eyes change when they realize who I was. Easier to stay out here with the trees and the rust. Around 9, I spotted Scarlett locking up early. Lights inside the cooperative snapped off one by one. She saw me through the storm, raised a hand to her mouth and yelled, "County says they're cutting the ridgeline power till morning." I gave her a nod and kept walking. I was maybe 30 steps from my hut when the world cracked open behind me. Screech. Slam. That twist of sound when metal fights concrete and loses. I turned just in time to catch spinning headlights on the far side of the bridge. A sport utility vehicle had fishtailed across both lanes and now hung half over the edge, back tires twitching, front wheels hanging in midair like a fish on a hook. I didn't think. I didn't pause. I ran. Her breath came in short bursts, tight and scared, as we limped through the rain. I had one arm under her shoulder and one hand locked around the strap of that tote bag she'd nearly died trying to save. I didn't ask what was in it. I knew. She clutched her belly like she was trying to hold the whole world in one piece. The wind slammed us sideways every few steps. I could barely see my own hut through the branches, but I knew the trail by muscle memory. She gritted her teeth and whimpered once, then again, louder. I said, "Almost there," even though it wasn't true, not yet. The mud sucked at our boots. Her knees buckled. I dragged her the last 30 feet like I was hauling firewood. We made it through the flap of the tarp roof just before the sky split wide again. Inside smelled like smoke, damp wool, and kerosene. I helped her onto the pallet and got the lantern lit with hands I hadn't trusted in years. My fingers still worked. My mind didn't let me think. It just let me move. She cried out and rolled onto her side. "They're too close together," she gasped. I don't know if I can do this." "You already are," I said, ripping the tarp bag open and yanking out diapers, wipes, and a thin blanket. "Just keep going." Her name hadn't mattered on the bridge, but now it did. "Jane," I said, steady and low. "Look at me. It's going to hurt. It's supposed to. But I've done this before. I've got you. She nodded, face pale and drenched with sweat, and pulled her jeans down with both hands. The wet denim stuck at the knees. I helped her. No time for modesty, no room for dignity, just pain and instinct, and the ticking beat of life refusing to wait. I ripped a clean flannel strip from the stash I keep for winter wraps. I twisted 2 makeshift ties, felt for the crown, and saw the truth in front of me. The first one was coming fast. "Push," I said. She screamed like something wild, and I coached her through it, heel of my palm pressing to her knee for leverage. My hands moved like they'd never left the delivery room. The boy came hard and mad, red and slick and already fighting. I cleared his nose, wrapped him in the cardigan she tore off mid-contraction, and laid him skin to skin against her chest. Her arms came around him like they were meant to. 1 tear ran sideways down her temple. She didn't speak, but it wasn't over. "Jane," I said, low and urgent. "Number 2's still inside. You're not done." She gritted her teeth. I don't." "You can," I snapped, kneeling again. "He needs you to." The second baby didn't come the same way. He stuck sideways, shoulder high, and for 1 awful second I thought he might die inside her. I braced, twisted, and felt the cold spike of silence when he slipped free without a cry. "No, no, no," I muttered, clearing his mouth, rubbing his back hard. He was limp, eyes shut, skin graying. I rubbed again, firmer, then again, like I could summon his breath by force. A gasp, then a weak cry that broke open into a real scream, angry and alive. I nearly collapsed. Jane sobbed with relief as I laid him next to his brother and reached for another tie. The cord was thin but pulsing. I clamped with fingers, then blade. My hands shook once, just once, but they held. I cut, tied, and wrapped him tight. Jane lay back, exhausted, soaked in sweat and rain and something fierce I hadn't seen in years. I covered her legs, put both boys against her chest, and wrapped my jacket over the 3 of them like a shield. "You're not alone," I told her. "I'm going." She blinked. "Where?" "To get help." "You live out here." "I'm not the only one who doesn't sleep," I said, already grabbing the lantern. "You just stay alive." Her lips parted like she had more to say, but her eyes rolled and closed, her arms curling around both boys like instinct had taken over where strength gave out. I shoved a folded flannel under her neck and tucked the blanket in tighter around their bodies. Then I snapped the lantern shut and ducked back out into the storm. Rain hit me like tacks, cold, mean. I didn't care. I took the slope at a sprint, boots slipping in the mud, legs burning, breath already ragged. I hit the trail and kept going, past the bridge, past the twisted rail, and down the bend toward the only place in town that kept lights on after midnight. Nancy. She cleaned the floors at the co-op, unlocked doors no one else touched after hours. I prayed she was on shift, that she had the phone line, that she'd still open the door for someone like me. I ran harder. I was still soaked when I hit the co-op's back wall, lungs burning like I'd swallowed fire. The security light above the loading ramp had burned out weeks ago, but I knew which window had the thin curtain and the mop bucket beneath it. I pounded twice with the side of my fist. A dim light clicked on, curtain shifted, and Nancy Wood appeared in a worn hoodie and socked feet. She held up a finger to her lips. "My boy's asleep," she whispered. Then she looked closer at my face. Mud, blood, rain, panic, and unlatched the door without another word. The inside of the co-op office still smelled like lemon cleaner and dust. She reached under the desk and pulled out the beige landline that still worked even when the power didn't. I punched the number for county dispatch from memory. "This is Colin Perry," I said. "Near mile marker 13 where the bridge bends. Sport utility vehicle crash, 1 adult female, twins born in the last 30 minutes. Bring 2 neonatal units and a stretcher. You'll need to come down the slope just west of the guardrail." The operator asked my name again. I repeated it. She said help was en route and hung up before I could add more. I set the phone down. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Nancy didn't ask a single question. She just disappeared into the back room, came out with a quilted flannel jacket that smelled faintly like mothballs, and said, "It was my dad's. He passed in March." She also pressed a crinkled paper sack into my hand. "Some church ladies left biscuits in the break room fridge. You'll need one later." I started, but the words didn't come right. I nodded twice. That was the closest I could get to thank you. The wind cut harder as I stepped back outside. I hit the trail again, knees locked, muscles screaming. The lantern's flame inside my hut would be the only light the medics had unless they brought their own. I waited just past the county marker where the gravel turned soft. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights slashed through the trees like lightning. The first paramedic out of the rig spotted me and said, "You the caller?" "I'm the guy who can carry a stretcher," I said, already turning back toward the slope. They followed fast, boots squelching, gear clattering. I pointed with my whole arm once we reached the trail. Hut's about 100 yards, no floor, low ceiling, mother's on her back, 2 live births. "You a medic?" one asked, eyeing the state of me. "I used to be. Just follow me." They stepped into the hut like it was a church. Quiet. No swearing. One of them turned to me and said, "You did that?" I nodded. "Good job, sir." They worked fast. Neonatal warmers, blankets, oxygen tubes. One paramedic tucked both infants into tiny thermal bags. The other checked Jane's vitals, got an intravenous line started, and then gave me the sort of look you give a person when you're not sure what they are. "She's stable. You clamped cords?" "Tied and cut. Clean flannel. Hands rinsed with whiskey. Blade wiped." He gave a low nod. "You really used to be something." I didn't say I was good at it. I just said I did it. He snorted once and helped lift Jane to the stretcher. Her lips were cracked, eyes half open. "They're okay," she whispered. "They're breathing," I said. "You did your part." They wrapped her in thermal foil and carried her out like a relic. Once the ambulance pulled away, the silence felt louder than the storm. I stepped back inside the hut and looked around. Torn towels, flannel strips, the cardigan balled in the corner. I picked up her blouse, damp and half-ripped, folded it once, then again, and set it on the crate I used for a table. Then I sat down, legs aching, and listened to the quiet hum of the creek swelling outside. That silence didn't last long. The next afternoon, just before dusk, tires crunched low on the track. I looked up and saw a dust blue SUV with county plates easing around the bend, tires slick with red clay. A door opened. Perfume hit first, then the voice I hadn't heard in 5 years. "Well, look what the storm dragged out." Vicky. She wore a rain shell over a blazer, heels sinking into the mud like they didn't belong here, which they didn't. Her hair was pulled up tight, makeup fresh, smile tight like a leash. "I figured you'd be out here," she said. "Been trying to get a hold of you for a while. County clerk says your lien's still floating. Got paperwork for you to sign, just to settle things properly." I didn't move. "There's nothing to settle." "You sure?" She tilted her head like I was a feral cat she didn't want to scare. "It's just a release signature, Colin. Doesn't even touch your shelter. It's an old joint loan from back when—" I said no. She smiled like she hadn't heard me. "You don't have to live like this. You know that, right? I could get this lot rezoned, find someone who'd—" I stepped past her and grabbed the tarp flap. "You don't need to come back here. I'm not signing anything." She didn't leave right away. Stood there blinking, recalculating like she always did. Then she turned, heels suctioning up wet clay, and climbed back into her shiny county SUV. She left without a word. I watched until the taillights vanished behind the bend, then ducked back inside. The flannel strips were still on the crate. I tossed them into a metal pail and doused the kerosene. The quiet came back again, but this time it didn't feel like punishment. A few weeks later, the rusted bell over the co-op door jingled as I was dropping screws into a plastic coffee can for Scarlett. I'd barely looked up before I heard her voice, soft now, but not fragile, steady, like someone who'd been through the worst week of her life and come out standing. "I'm not sure he's even real," Jane said with a laugh that had a new kind of weight to it. "Scarlett said we might find him in here or outside hammering something stubborn." Scarlett didn't miss a beat. That'd be accurate. He fixes things that don't ask to be fixed. I turned and saw her before she saw me. Jane stood at the counter in a raincoat 2 sizes too big, hair pulled back, posture straight but tired. The kind of tired only newborns know how to give you. On her hip, a baby sling, and from the bundle, I caught the softest noise, a grunt, maybe a snore. Next to her stood Vincent, clean-shaven, pressed shirt under a half-zipped fleece, sunglasses on his collar even though the clouds were stacked thick outside. He had that look people get when they've spent too long managing other people's emergencies, but don't know what to do in their own. They turned as I stepped up with my sack of nails and a used Tom Clancy paperback someone left in the free bin. Jane's eyes found mine first. She smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just sure. "You look taller when you're running toward a car hanging over water," she said. I grunted a dry laugh. "You looked smaller when you were yelling contractions at me." Vincent cleared his throat. "I'm told we owe you everything. Twice." "I don't collect," I said, stepping around them to set the nails down behind the counter. Jane shifted the baby sling gently and said, "We've been asking around for a month. Scarlett told us to show up on a Saturday." "Only day I'm not buried in repairs," I said, "and only because the trail's too wet for most fools." Vincent pulled out a slim, flat money clip and thumbed off several folded bills. "We'd like to thank you properly." I didn't touch it. "That's not how this works." "It's not charity," he said. "It's gratitude." "Keep it," I told him. "Put it toward diapers or a night nurse." He hesitated, then tucked it back into his pocket like it hadn't happened. "All right then. There's a hospital down in the valley, private nonprofit. One of our suppliers runs the foundation side. I could make a call. For me?" I shook my head. "I'm not hireable. Maybe they'd bend that if—" "I said I'm not," I cut in. "But if you really want to make a call, there's someone else." Jane looked up. "Who?" "Nancy Wood. She's the one who helped me call in the ambulance that night. Single mom, works janitorial here. Her kid, Tanner, he was born with a heart valve issue. Needs follow-up at a children's center out of state, but they've been kicking the paperwork back." Vincent didn't nod right away. He just listened. Then he took out a business card, flipped it over, and pulled a pen from his coat. "Name? Diagnosis if you got it. I'll take care of the rest." I rattled it off. He jotted it down neat and quick. His face didn't change, but the way he put the card away told me he wasn't pretending. "I'll call them Monday," he said. "Shouldn't take long." "Good," I said. "That'll mean more than anything you could give me." Jane smiled. "You didn't even hesitate." "I've got time," I said. "They don't." She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded envelope. "For you. I didn't know if you'd want pictures, but I figured maybe someday." I took the envelope and slid it into the inner pocket of my jacket without opening it. I didn't need to look right then. It was enough just to know she'd thought of it. Scarlett watched from behind the counter like a hawk wearing bifocals. As the couple turned to leave, she said, "Don't get lost on the county roads. Cell signal dies a mile past the grain elevator." "We've got GPS," Vincent said. Scarlett rolled her eyes. "That's what the last city boy said before ending up in 3 feet of creek." They laughed. Jane gave me one last nod before following her husband out the door. The bell jingled again, quieter this time. The door closed. Scarlett crossed her arms and leaned back. "You really are something stubborn and good, Colin." I picked up the paperback. "That's fair. You could have taken that money." "I did," I said. "Just not for me." She watched me a second longer like she was adding up columns I couldn't see. "You're not fooling anybody anymore, you know." "I'm not trying to." She slid the nail sack toward me. "Then stop walking like you still expect the ground to give out." I didn't answer. just nodded once, slow, and headed back toward the trail with a paperback under one arm and the envelope pressing against my ribs like a second heartbeat. It didn't matter how many boards I nailed back down or how many thorn vines I cleared off the trail. In a town like Ridge Lake, rumors stuck better than moss, and mine had grown antlers big enough to mount above the bar at the Moose Lodge. Drunk, fell asleep, killed a couple. That's how people whispered it. In the produce aisle, at the feed store, through cracked driver windows at four-way stops. I never corrected them. Let 'em talk. You go quiet long enough, people decide what kind of ghost you are. I kept my head down, lived by the bridge, fixed what I could, and made peace with the rest. Then one morning, Scarlett slid a yellowed envelope across the co-op counter, like it was a bar tab she didn't want to read out loud. Her mouth was tight. Found this digging through the old board file drawer. It's yours. I didn't open it right away. I stood there too long, just holding it in my hand. The paper felt brittle, like one good bend might tear it in half. Finally, I tucked it under my arm and walked out the back, down the steps, and onto the stoop where the milk crates stacked up beside the ice machine. Sat down, ripped the seal. Inside were two papers. One was a county report dated 11 years ago. The other was a letter to the editor clipped from the Ridge Lake Record, 7 years back. Both smelled faintly of dust and toner. The report was straightforward, an internal investigation summary from Mercy General. The language was clean, cold, professional. No fault found. No negligence. No criminal action warranted. Didn't matter. The rumor had already done its job. But the second paper, that one hit different. The letter came from a young mother thanking an unnamed emergency room surgeon for keeping her newborn alive during a high-risk transfer to the Children's Hospital in Lexington. She didn't remember all the names, just initials. Dr. C.P. in Mercy's emergency room. If you're out there, you gave our son a chance we never thought we'd have. You didn't say much. You just did the work. I hope you're still doing it. From a grateful mom, Nancy W. I stared at that letter like it was in a foreign language. I didn't breathe right for a minute. My hands went still. Nancy. I remembered that baby. Bird-boned and dusky. A February night cold enough to crack your knuckles. And a nurse yelling that the helo was 12 minutes out. I'd intubated that kid by feel with my coat still zipped. I hadn't thought about that shift in years. The irony bit deep. That was the night that should have redeemed me. Instead, the one that wrecked me came 3 months later, inside a fully lit operating room, not on a roadside or under a bridge. It was a bowel resection gone sideways. Patient coded on the table. Complications. Internal review said unavoidable. Family said otherwise. Lawyers got involved. They didn't fire me exactly, but they let me know I wasn't coming back. The day I left, I drove until the road ran out. Now here I was, 11 years later, holding a piece of paper that said I wasn't the villain people made me into. Scarlett stepped out onto the stoop with 2 black coffees in paper cups. She handed me one without a word, then nodded at the envelope. You want to correct the record? I kept staring at the paper. What's the point now? The point, she said, with that bite in her voice she saves for people pretending they're fine, is that you're not who they say you are. Never were. I let it stick. Yeah, she said, sitting beside me. And maybe it's time to scrape it off. She reached into her vest pocket and pulled out something I hadn't touched in years. A black plastic pen, cheap, the kind with a chewed end and no cap. She set it on my knee. I'm not asking for a memoir, she said. Just facts, dates, job title. You want initials or full name? I looked at the envelope again, then back at her. Initials, I said. No headlines. Scarlett nodded like she already knew the answer. I'll type something for the co-op site. Community board only. No comments, no drama, just truth. She stood and went back inside. I stayed there another hour, holding the pen without writing a word. That night, the co-op's back door clicked open around 7. I was oiling the hinge on the cabinet that held the propane tanks when I heard the voice behind me. "Colin?" I turned. Nancy stood there in her work shoes and that same threadbare hoodie, one hand holding a brown paper bag, the other already over her mouth. She saw the printout tacked to the board behind me, the one Scarlett had posted with the letter clipped beneath. Her eyes jumped between it and me. "I wrote that after the winter my son turned one," she said. "We almost lost him. I never knew you were—" She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I nodded once. Yeah, that was me. She stood there for a second too long, like her brain was still catching up with the memory. Then she crossed the room and hugged me like we'd known each other our whole lives. No questions, no explanation, just something solid and warm in the middle of a cold month. Neither of us said anything for a while. After she left, Scarlett wandered out of the back office with a file folder and a look I knew too well. She dropped it on the counter and said, "Free clinic in Miller Ridge takes retired docs with limited licenses. You write the board, they'll talk." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of license?" "Supervised. Volunteer basis. Nights and weekends. No pressure. I'm not sure they want someone who sleeps under a tarp. They want someone who knows what to do when a newborn stops breathing," she said, not even blinking. "And I think you already know the difference." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. That night I went back to my hut with the envelope in one hand and a paper cup in the other. I stared at that old pen till the flame in my lantern dipped low. Then I actually started thinking about what I'd write. The cot came first, then a real chair with arms, a box of thick socks, a bundle of firewood I didn't cut myself. Then the wood stove showed up, small, black, square-bellied, with a bright new stovepipe and a metal base plate that hadn't seen a day of rust. No note, no receipt, just sitting outside my hut like it had always belonged. I knew who was behind it. Vincent never signed his name, but the trail markers got updated the same week, and the new rails on the co-op ramp were poured concrete with powder coat. He knew the county codes better than they did. I asked him once, straight out, "You doing this?" He looked up from his phone and said, "What, code compliance? I just make suggestions." Then he changed the subject and offered me a thermos of black coffee that was still hot. I took it. The stove worked better than anything I'd used in 10 years. I dried my socks on the guardrail that week, and for once my fingers didn't ache after sundown. Felt like cheating, like somebody was trying to make the cold too easy. But nothing stays quiet forever. First cold snap came early November. Sharp wind, clear sky, low 30s by dusk. I had the stove going, pipe glowing orange, when a gust kicked through the canvas and sucked air down the flue. I didn't catch it until I smelled tarp melting. The spark hit where the stovepipe passed too close to a tarp seam. The corner curled, smoked, and started to eat itself. I grabbed my wool blanket, dunked it in creek water, and slapped at the wall till the smoke choked me sideways. It went out, but my lungs didn't like it. By noon the next day, I was still coughing like I'd swallowed pine ash when I heard the crunch of boots on gravel. Scarlett came first, toolbox in hand, Nancy behind her with a red fire extinguisher, a pan of cornbread wrapped in foil, and that half-worried, half-fed-up look only moms carry. "You alive?" Scarlett asked, already looking past me at the scorched tarp. "Mostly. You keep putting out fires with wet blankets, and you're going to end up half dead and half stupid." Nancy nudged her. "We're just glad you're all right." I stepped back and let them through. The cot got moved out. Chair too. They made space. 2 teenagers from the county trail crew showed up a half-hour later hauling tin sheets and a box of rivets. They capped the pipe with help from a stepladder that came from God knows where. Then Earl, old vet with a limp and a leather vest full of campaign pins, rolled in slow and steady with a toolkit under one arm. He looked at the tarp, sniffed once, and said, "We're wiring you a proper fire alarm." I raised an eyebrow. "Where's it from?" "Donated kit. Sat in the VFW closet for 3 years. Still good." He set to work without waiting for permission. By dusk, I had a working smoke detector, legal pipe clearance, and an entire cornbread pan missing 3 slices. Next morning, Jane came down the trail pushing a double stroller with one hand and a sack of flannel onesies tucked under the other arm. She looked like she hadn't slept in a year, but still had places to be by noon. I stepped outside as she parked the stroller in the dry patch near the fire ring. The boys were bundled tight, hats pulled down, cheeks red with cold. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded card. "It's nothing big," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a photo, 2 wrinkled foreheads, both boys side by side in the same hospital bassinet. Underneath, her handwriting, older one's Colin. "Don't make a big deal out of it." I didn't know what to say. My throat locked up tighter than the stove damper. I nodded, said thanks, and tucked the card into my pocket like it was made of glass. When she left, I took a walk. Not far, just down to the water. Stood there until the wind dried my face on its own. That same week, I caught a middle schooler from down in Briar Hollow, tiptoeing out onto the frozen creek edge chasing a soccer ball. Ice cracked under his heel. I yelled and waved him off. He stopped, turned. His eyes were big. "You okay?" I asked when he got back to Solid Trail. He nodded. "Yes, sir." That "sir" landed funny, like he hadn't expected to say it but couldn't help himself. 2 days later, I was out checking the bridge rails again, measuring one of the east side bolts that had worked itself loose after the last freeze-thaw. Scarlett came by with a cup of soup in a travel mug and stood there watching me work. "You're going to end up on a committee," she said. I snorted. "I already have a job." "You keep fixing what the county ignores, they're going to start pretending you work for them." "Let 'em pretend. Just means I'll have someone else to yell at when they dump gravel in the wrong spot." She handed me the soup, then didn't move. Just stood there quiet. "What?" I asked. She shook her head. "You used to look like a fuse about to blow. Now you just look like you're waiting for the next thing to fix." I looked at the bolt again. "There's always a next thing." She nodded. "Yeah, but this week you didn't hate sundown." I saw that too. I didn't answer. Just sipped the soup. That night, I unfolded the photo again under lantern light and looked at the 2 tiny faces. One of them named after me. I didn't cry. I just sat there and let it be what it was. The cot creaked behind me. The stove ticked as it cooled. And for the first time in years, I felt like I'd stopped falling, even if it was only for a minute. Vincent did exactly what he said he would do. I don't say that about many people, but he did. He ran the paperwork through his company's health coordinator, looped in a supplier foundation that funds pediatric travel for employees' families, and within 3 weeks, Nancy had printed itineraries, approval letters, and an intake packet for the Children's Center in St. Louis. The morning we left, I met them in the co-op lot before sunrise. Tanner was bundled in 2 layers and still managed to look like he'd float off in a gust if you let go. 8 years old, bird-thin, eyes too wide for his face, like a barn owl trying to understand the world one piece at a time. He didn't smile when he saw me. He just looked at my hands, then looked up and said, "You fixed babies once." It wasn't a question. Nancy smoothed his jacket collar. "Colin's just riding with us to the hospital, remember?" "I know," Tanner said. "He won't stay, though. He hates waiting rooms." I blinked, surprised. "How'd you know that?" "You look like someone who counts tiles when they're nervous." I didn't have an answer for that. Nancy chuckled soft under her breath, then put her hand on my arm. "Let's go." The drive to St. Louis was quiet. Tanner slept. Nancy stared out the window. I kept both hands on the wheel, and the heater turned just enough to keep the frost from retaking the corners of the glass. At the hospital entrance, I parked crooked and followed them inside. The lobby had that polished smell, like disinfectant and lemon, clean but not warm. I walked them as far as the reception counter, handed over the packet, then stood still while the nurse ran through the list. Pre-op lab draw, consent form, allergies,
Emergency contact. Nancy signed everything like she'd already done it 3 times in her head. When she turned to me, I couldn't move. My feet locked to the mat like they were bolted down.
Nancy reached out and touched my sleeve. "It's okay. We got this." "I know," I said, even though I didn't. I stepped back, gave Tanner a small salute, and turned for the door. I sat in the cafeteria for 3 hours, watching people come and go. Counted ceiling tiles. 48 in the main section, 20 in the annex. Ate half a vending machine pretzel and drank 2 cups of burnt coffee I didn't want. I didn't stay for the outcome. I drove back to the trail because I didn't know where else to go. The call came the next morning. Vincent's voice came through rough and fast like he was boarding a plane. "Surgery went well. They say the valve's holding. No complications." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "I gotta admit," he said, "I underestimated all this." "All what?" "This whole town. You. That kid. What matters? It's easy to get tunnel vision when your whole job is numbers." "Admitting it is heavy lifting too," I said. He laughed. "You ever drink beer?" "Used to." "Well, I owe you one you probably won't drink." "Fair enough." We hung up. 2 days later, the peace broke. I was stacking wood outside my hut, sweat cooling on my neck, when I heard the crunch of tires I already knew too well. Dust blue SUV, front plates from the county pool. Door opened before I even turned. My ex-wife, now in county administration. She stepped out in a fitted raincoat and block heels like she was walking into a country club, not a clearing with half-burnt logs and muddy ruts. Behind her waddled a notary, buttoned vest, breath that smelled like cinnamon gum and stale nerves. She carried a folder. He carried a stamp. Vicky didn't waste time. "Colin, we've been over this. All I need is a signature to settle the old lien. It doesn't touch your current lot, just clears the paper trail so I can finish the refinance." "Not signing." "You haven't even read—" "I don't need to. The answer's no." She stepped closer, voice lowering. "You don't have to live like this. You were a surgeon. We could sell the trail lot, move on, maybe even—" "Stop." She blinked. I turned to the notary. "You're welcome to walk back to your car. If you try to open that stamp case, I'll be calling Sheriff Dillard before you close it." The man nodded quick and turned back without a word. Vicky stared at me like she couldn't believe she hadn't gotten her way. Then she made her real mistake. She followed me to the co-op. Scarlett was behind the counter balancing the register. Vicky waltzed in like she owned the place, folder still clutched tight. "Scarlett, be a dear and tell your favorite handyman to stop acting like a martyr and do what's sensible." Scarlett didn't look up, just tapped her pen against the glass. "Ma'am, we don't solicit here." Vicky smiled like she'd just smelled something rotten. "I'm not selling anything. I'm trying to collect what's owed." I came in then, muddy boots and all. Vicky turned to me and raised her voice. "He walked away. From everything. Work, marriage, responsibility. You all think he's some kind of local hero now, but you don't know the full picture." Scarlett capped her pen, looked Vicky square in the face, and said loud enough for everyone in the store to hear, "You're talking about the wrong person." Silence. Then one guy in line cleared his throat, and a woman from the post window glanced over with wide eyes. Vicky's face flushed, eyes darting. Her heels clicked fast as she left. The mist outside had picked up, and her hair frizzed at the edges. Her eyes were doing math the whole walk back to the car. She drove off without a word. I turned back to the cordwood outside and kept stacking. No one said anything about it afterward. They didn't have to. The next time the rain let up long enough to sit without freezing, I wrote the letter. 1 page. Short. Honest. "I accept your past decision. I'm asking for a restricted volunteer permit to work under supervision." Scarlett read it over twice, red pen in hand, and crossed out every apology I'd buried in the middle. She added bullet points, dates, certifications, past license numbers, the fact that our entire county is a care desert after 6 p.m., and no urgent care within 30 miles. You're not begging, she said, handing it back. You're telling them how they can use a tool they threw away. I mailed it from the co-op counter, while a man from the feed store waited behind me with a roll of shipping tape and a box of bolts. Scarlett slid the envelope into the outgoing bin and nodded once. That was all. 2 weeks later, Nancy's flip phone buzzed next to the trail mix jars while she was scrubbing a scuff off the linoleum. She handed me the phone. Miller Ridge area code, for you. The woman on the line introduced herself as the clinic director. Come sit in, she said. Let's see if you're serious. That Thursday, I drove out in Earl's truck, window cracked, seatbelt frayed. The clinic was a low building set beside a grocery outlet, with one handwritten sign taped to the glass. If you're coughing, mask up. We love you, but still. Inside, a nurse practitioner named Rhonda moved through a hallway lined with plastic chairs like she was leading traffic at a 4-lane intersection. She pointed, waved, answered 2 questions at once, handed a thermometer to a 5-year-old, and asked me over her shoulder, "You shadowing or judging?" Shadowing. Good. No room for judges. I followed her the rest of the shift. She triaged a flu line like an orchestra conductor, kids with fevers, a farmer with blood pressure through the roof, 2 teenagers with matching coughs who wouldn't admit they were dating. I didn't say a word until she called me over. You, she said, pointing. Help that dad wrap his ankle. Show, don't touch. He looked nervous until I explained, calm and slow, just like I used to when med students hovered too close. He got it right on the 3rd try. Then I showed a grandmother how to check her spacer for clogs. She patted my arm when she got it. Somewhere in there, my hands stopped shaking. The provisional approval came through on a Friday. Scarlett was the one who handed me the manila envelope with the return address stamped official and centered. I opened it with the blade I keep clipped to my boot. Inside was a 1-page authorization, good for 6 months. Supervised work only. Field support permitted. I signed the bottom line on the back of a clipboard using a pen chained to the reception desk. Sunday morning came quiet. The air had that brittle crackle that meant frost was coming soon. I was walking the lower bend near the creek when Earl came stomping out of the brush with a look on his face I didn't like. "Hike her down," he wheezed, hand on his ribs. "About 2 bends in. Ankle's twisted up bad. Wife's with him." I didn't ask questions. I ran. Took me 4 minutes to reach them. Man, maybe mid-40s. Flannel shirt soaked with sweat. Foot bent wrong at the joint. White around the mouth. Eyes darting. His wife looked up like I was the whole rescue team, and the emergency room rolled into one. "I don't know what happened," she said, panicking. "He stepped on something and screamed. I think I heard a snap. He's gonna pass out." I dropped to one knee, felt for pulses, checked cap refill. "You're gonna be all right," I said, as much for her as him. I took 2 trail sticks from the side path, wrapped the joint tight with a belt from my pack, and propped him against a boulder so the swelling wouldn't cut circulation. I flagged down Earl's side-by-side 10 minutes later, and we got him loaded in the back, slow and steady. His wife didn't wait. She threw her arms around me like I was a blood relative and whispered, "Thank you. Thank you." I didn't say anything, just nodded once and waved them off as the engine kicked up leaves. By the time I got back to the co-op, word had already moved. Scarlett gave me a knowing look. The guy at the seed bin nodded at me like he'd always known. Someone in line asked, "You the one who helped that fella up on the trail?" I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, good work." Later that week, Jane and Vincent rolled up in their SUV with the back hatch full. Cooler packed with sandwiches, 2 flannel blankets, and a lantern that didn't flicker when you turned it on. "This isn't charity," Vincent said, handing me the box. Jane smiled. "He means it. It's for the field station." I raised an eyebrow. "What?" "That's what we're calling it now," she said. "You've got more supplies and patient contact than the free clinic some days. Might as well give it a name." I didn't argue. I just stood there holding the cooler. Field station. It felt better than hut. The crews rolled in on a Monday morning with orange vests, clipboards, and a diesel compressor that scared every crow for half a mile. County engineers said they were fixing the guardrail and adding a new drainage lip. Scarlett leaned on the co-op counter that afternoon and called it government finally doing something right, even if it took 2 years and a berth in a tarp shack to get there. She handed me a manila folder with a sticky note on the front. "Thought you should see this," it said in her handwriting, sharp, no-nonsense block letters. Inside was a printed list, 31 names. Most I recognized, a few I didn't. People from the trail committee, the co-op board, the firehouse. At the top, bolded and underlined, recommendation for county recognition, volunteer trail steward, C. Perry. I flipped through it once and shut it. "I don't need a title," I said. Scarlett poured coffee like she'd been waiting for that answer. "Titles aren't for you. They're shields when some clipboard from Frankfurt tries to bulldoze your place. You think I want to be called postmaster? I hate the word, but it's what keeps the lights on and the idiots off my back." I didn't argue, just folded the flap closed and slid it into my jacket. While the crews rattled bolts loose and poured concrete around new rail supports, I walked the long loop east of the creek, the one most people skip because it's thick with scrub and blackberry tangle. That's where I found the hound, gray-muzzled, fur matted with burrs, legs stuck between 2 branches like he'd tried to cut through and failed. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just looked at me with tired eyes like he'd been waiting. I cut the branches away and slipped a bootlace through his collar. He walked behind me without a sound, every step careful. We made it back to the hut by dusk. I gave him half a biscuit and set out a wool blanket in the corner. He curled up like it wasn't his first time there. Next day at the clinic, Nancy stopped by with Tanner. She wore that hopeful smile that moms use when they're trying not to expect too much. But the color in Tanner's cheeks gave her away. Bright pink across the nose, like he'd finally filled out his own skin. "I got something," Tanner said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. "Made it at school." He laid it on the table. Crayon drawing, big shaky bridge, a boxy hut next to it, a stick figure with long arms. Over the hut, in uneven block letters, CP. He pointed at the initials. "That's you." I looked at Nancy. She was already digging in her purse. She pulled out a familiar envelope, the one from years ago. The letter she wrote to the paper after that ER transfer. She laid it beside the drawing. The past and present sitting side by side. "That winter," she said, quiet, "you bought us an hour that kept my son alive. I didn't know it was you till all this came back around." I stared at the drawing because looking her in the eye felt like too much. "I'm glad you wrote," I said. That was all I had. Tanner beamed like I'd handed him a medal. Back at the trailhead, the crew was wrapping up. Fresh bolts shined on the east rail. The new drainage lip ran smooth and clean like something out of a catalog. A guy in a county hat set out a folding table with a plastic coffee urn and 2 boxes of cookies nobody wanted. "Reopening," he said when I passed. "Just a photo and a ribbon. No speeches." I nodded and kept walking. Later that day, Nancy caught up to me outside the co-op. She had a half-empty grocery bag in one hand and Tanner's backpack in the other. "Come over after the ribbon thing," she said. I tilted my head. "Something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. He wants you to see where we put the bird feeder. Said you'd like it. Also, the cot can't be comfortable in the cold." "I've got the stove." She smiled. "We've got a spare room. Just think about it." "I will. You already are." She turned and walked to her truck, Tanner waving out the window. The old hound at my heel watched her go, then sat down like he'd just decided this was home now. We stood at the east rail just after 7. Sun cracked over the ridge behind us, throwing light across the metal bolts like they mattered. The crew had finished painting the guard trim that morning. Flat gray, nothing fancy, but clean, dry, solid. A road worker in a neon vest held out a pair of dull scissors the size of his forearm. "All right then," he said, like this was something we did every week. Jane stood off to the side, one twin asleep against her chest in a wrap, the other perched on her hip, chewing the collar of her hoodie. Vincent poured paper cups of coffee with the kind of rhythm only church ushers and funeral homes ever really learn. Scarlett nodded toward the scissors. "You did the work," she said. "I just happened to be there." "You're always there." I didn't argue. I took the scissors, stepped up, and cut the yarn they'd tied across the east entrance. It wasn't even ribbon. Looked like something pulled out of a craft bin. A few folks clapped out of instinct, the kind of slow, polite clapping people do when they're not sure if they're supposed to. Jane bumped my elbow. "The older twin? He's Colin," she said, eyes bright. "Don't make a speech." "Wouldn't dream of it." I reached down and tapped the kid's sock. "Welcome to the county, kid." He didn't wake up, which felt about right. Scarlett walked over and held out a white envelope. Official seal, return address from Frankfurt. I froze for half a second, then saw Vincent's nod and relaxed my grip. "Go ahead," Scarlett said. "You're allowed to open good news, you know." Inside was a single page, an updated volunteer license, now valid for 1 year. Top line, authorization for clinic and field service under supervision. I read it twice, then looked up. Scarlett smirked. "You keep signing, I'll keep driving you." Deal. Across the road, a dust-blue SUV rolled by, slow as fog. Windows up, Vicky in the driver's seat, sunglasses too big for her face. She didn't stop, didn't wave, just stared past the windshield like she couldn't decide if we were real. Then she was gone. Some folks let their moment pass. I spotted Nancy and Tanner by the co-op door. She had a grocery bag in one hand and Earl's old green thermos in the other. Tanner waved when he saw me, whole arm swinging like a windmill. The dog by my heel perked up like he'd been waiting for that exact sound. "Come on," Nancy called. "I got stew in the crock and a porch swing that doesn't squeak anymore." I looked down the trail. My hut sat quiet, stove cold. Tools hung just how I left them. Cot made, flannel folded. Nothing wrong with it. But it wasn't home. I looked back at the road. Tanner's chest rose smooth and easy. The dog trotted ahead without looking back. "I'll get my coat," I said. "And that lantern. Field station or not, it'll do more good at your place." Nancy smiled and shifted the bag higher on her hip. "We've got space." We walked the shoulder together, slow, quiet. Jane waved us off as she adjusted the wrap on her chest. Scarlett raised her coffee like a half salute. The river behind us ran steady but soft. The bridge didn't groan. No creaks, no complaints. For the first time in longer than I could name, I didn't feel like I had to be under it to keep it from falling. "Before you head out, let me ask you something straight. If your own past came knocking like Colin's did, would you step toward it or keep running? And if this story hit you even a little, please tap the hype button to push it further, hit subscribe and like because it truly helps, and drop a comment. Even a quick, good story. So I know you're out there. Thank you for listening. Some mornings still start the same. Flip on the kettle, wait for the slow blue light, tell myself to breathe before the day starts chewing on me. It's Bella's kettle. Cheap steel, dented, one side of the plastic handle melted near the base. She claimed it made better tea for tigers, and I didn't argue. That was her code name for me. I kept it because I never liked replacements. I'm 37 now. I'm Nate Griffin. I live in Brooklyn, and I run export logistics for high-value stones, Antwerp, Dubai, Hong Kong. Most guys in my field like sleek machines and fast flights. I trust old gear and quiet mornings. That day, I'd just come back from a brutal stretch, 7 days of fire drills trying to unfreeze a wire from Dubai. I was running on coffee and leftover adrenaline. I was already late, shoes in hand, tie in my mouth when I spotted it. A white envelope in the lobby mail slot. No stamp, no return address. Just 7 words in black ink. To my favorite tiger, from your panda. I froze. My pulse thudded like a warning bell. That was our thing, our names. No one else knew them. We'd whisper them on late nights in Clifton, joking, half asleep. Bella never posted them anywhere. I certainly didn't. Quick note. Before we continue, Share in the comments which city or country you're listening from. It helps us see where you're tuning in from and figure out the best time to post new stories. Thanks. Now let's get into it. Mrs. Alvarez, I said, half yelling down the hallway. Did anyone drop off mail this morning? She peeked out of the side office, still tucking in her shirt. I was in the bathroom. I didn't see anyone, Mr. Griffin. Could have been anyone with the door code. I wanted to bark. I didn't. I nodded, took the envelope, and went upstairs. I didn't open it right away. I carried it like a live wire, set it on the counter, picked it up, set it down again. My head told me scam. My gut said shut up and listen. In the end, I opened it with one hand, still holding my travel mug in the other. The smell hit me first. Soft, soapy perfume she wore on Sundays when she wasn't working. Clean. Familiar. My stomach clenched. Then the writing. It started like she'd been watching me this whole time. Mentioned the PATH train, our first ride. That night we got locked out of her place in Clifton and had to sleep on her porch swing under a beach towel. It referenced my cufflinks, the ones she used to call dice on a string. Said a sensitive could bridge messages if I played it right. Asked me to write back, leave cash. Said she'd hear me. No name, no proof, but too many details to shrug off. I read it 3 times. Then again. Then tucked it under the kettle like it was some cursed artifact I couldn't throw away. I stood there, arms crossed, staring out at the East River through the kitchen window, my reflection staring back with that same worn-out look I've had since Clifton. And then, like a complete idiot, I said it out loud. If this is you, Panda, forgive me for testing you. I turned back to the counter, slid the letter into a drawer, and made one hard promise to myself. I'd write back, but I'd set traps. Little ones. Deliberate errors. Stuff only she'd know. If it was a game, I'd play it better. If it was real, I owed her that much. I poured my tea, grabbed my brief, and walked out the door like I hadn't just had a ghost ask for money. Back then, months before the letters, she said it without flinching. Unless you can teleport my wallet from Montclair, I'm in trouble. I caught her tone first, tired, half joking, but brittle like glass right before the snap. She stood to the left of the board, hugging a canvas bag like it owed her money. I asked if she needed help. She said she'd already missed 1 shift that week and couldn't afford to miss another. I pulled out my phone, checked the NJ Transit board again just to kill the moment, then handed her a one-way to the end of the line. She looked at the ticket, blinked, and said, "This where you try for my number and tell me you're a nice guy?" It came out dry as a bone. No flirt, no tilt to the voice, just pure defense. I laughed anyway. "That was awful," I said. "Try again." She cracked a smile, then folded the ticket once before tucking it into her back pocket. "Thanks, Tiger," she muttered, not even looking at me. The name didn't mean anything yet, just a throwaway. We rode together for 3 stops. She had that nervous habit of tapping her nails against the metal pole, tick, tick, tick like a clock counting down something private. I asked what she did, and she said she arranged flowers and stretched budgets like gum. "Peonies and thistle," she told me. "The trick is distraction. Bright and spiky distracts from cheap." I told her I moved high-dollar stones through airports and didn't lose sleep unless something bounced. When we hit Secaucus, she stood up, pulled the cord, and turned to me. "You talk like a guy who doesn't get stuck." "Not if I can help it," I said. I handed her a crumpled 20 from my coat and told her not to argue. She argued anyway, then took it with a tight nod and a look that said she hated needing it. A week later I saw her again. Midtown, greasy burger joint with 2 stools open and one of them already mine. She walked in, recognized me, didn't blink. "What, you stalking me now?" "I live here. This is my territory," I shot back. I gave her the seat. We split fries. She talked about her landlord raising rent and me not knowing how to eat fast food like a local. She missed her direct back to Montclair. I walked her to the track and she yelled over her shoulder, "Call me this time, Tiger!" Right as the doors shut. She meant it. We got into a rhythm. Sundays in Hoboken, Thursday nights in Montclair, sometimes meeting in the middle just to stand on a pier and breathe. I brought her earrings once. She looked at them, smiled too politely, then tucked them back in the box. Said they were pretty, but she didn't like feeling expensive. "Do you know how heavy this bracelet feels on the subway?" she asked once, rubbing the underside of her wrist. "Then take it off," I said. "You don't owe me any show." She did sometimes. She'd wear it on the walk over and pocket it before dinner. I never asked why. Some people keep score. Bella didn't. She just didn't want to owe anything. She got me socks. I know that sounds dumb, but they were good socks. Warm, thick, like she'd actually checked the label and thought about it. And later the kettle, the one I still use. She said it boiled better. For tigers, she joked one night, pouring water like she'd done it 1,000 times. We had this shorthand by then, Tiger and Panda. Dice on a string for my cufflinks. Tuesday roses, when we needed a pick-me-up midweek. Stuff no one else would get, and that's how we liked it. We built it in the margins, stolen hours between work and noise. She hated the city sound, said it made her jaw tight, but she loved train platforms because of how people hugged. There was a night, early January, just past closing at her shop. Cold enough to burn your fingers if you weren't careful. I walked in with a plain ring in my coat pocket. No diamonds, no speech. She was sweeping petals off the floor. She looked up when I said her name. I didn't do a big setup. I just said, "I want you to marry me." She didn't speak right away. She dropped the broom, stepped toward me, and put both hands on my face. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry the way people do in movies. It was quieter than that. Then she said yes. Simple. Like she'd already known. After that, she asked if we could keep it just ours until spring. No announcement, no posts, just something quiet. I said of course. That was her way. If she didn't want the world in it, it meant it mattered. We set the date for June 18th. Small ceremony. Garden out in Nutley behind a friend's community center. She'd picked out a corner with ivy and stone benches. We were going to have sandwiches, plastic chairs, and probably one drunk uncle on my side. I booked my work travel around it. Antwerp in March, Dubai in April, Hong Kong in May. Tight window, but I told myself I'd be back in time. Everything was locked in. That last night before I flew to Dubai, we sat on her stoop in Clifton. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "You're the only thing I don't have to stretch." I didn't answer, just kissed the top of her head and told myself I'd be home before it mattered. But long before that night in Bay Ridge, there was Dubai. I was still in that glass tower on Sheikh Zayed Road when Bella texted she had a cough. I called, heard the rattle in her breath, and told her to get checked out. She said she'd be fine. She had tea and lemon, and work was slow anyway. I should have pushed harder. I should have heard the strain under her voice. But a client moved a meeting up by an hour, and I told myself I'd call her again later. Later didn't happen. 2 weeks passed before I could get home. When the deal finally broke my way and I landed at JFK ahead of schedule, I felt 10 feet tall. I didn't even shower. I grabbed my bag, caught a cab, and told the driver to take the Pulaski Bridge route. I wanted to see her. I wanted to surprise her. I had the ring receipt in my pocket like it mattered. By the time I reached her building in Clifton, the adrenaline was fading. I knocked until my knuckles stung. I called. I listened to the hollow silence on the other side of the door. I called again. I knocked again. My throat tightened in a way I didn't like. Then the older neighbor, the one with the slippers and the apron, cracked her door open and said it the way people talk about rain. "She passed, honey. Pneumonia. I'm so sorry." My ears went hot. The ground tilted sideways. I said, "What? When?" But she already looked sorry she'd spoken. She added that the county had handled it because Bella had no listed family. A friend from the home handled the rest. Service done, paperwork signed, box lowered. All of it finished before I even crossed an ocean. I walked down the street because I couldn't stand still. I walked past the corner store, past the bus stop, past the intersection where we used to meet. Every step felt like trying to breathe through a fist. I ended up at the Red Roof Women's Shelter she'd mentioned once. The door buzzed. A tall woman with sharp eyes opened it just a crack. "Christina Davis?" I asked. Her stare flicked from my suit to my face like she was measuring guilt. Then she said, "You're late," with this cold finality that wiped me out. Before I could speak, she added, "You weren't needed for the funeral," and shut the door in my face. I stood there with my hand still lifted, like maybe she'd open it again. She didn't. 2 days later, I found the burial site, not through family, not through friends, but through a clerk's bored voice on the phone. I wasn't invited, but I went anyway. Some county worker had already covered the thin coffin with dirt. No flowers, no marker, nothing. I stood 100 feet away because that was the rule. I didn't break it. I didn't yell or curse. I didn't drop to my knees like a movie idiot. I just stood there with my hands shaking and my jaw locked. After that, I dismantled myself. It started slow, extra whiskey and coffee, then skipping meals, then more whiskey, then no coffee at all. I stopped sleeping at home and crashed on the floor next to my desk. My assistant covered for me, telling partners I was stuck in transit, which was technically true in the sense that I couldn't move forward or back. One night, I woke up on the carpet with my cheek pressed against a stack of invoices and realized I'd almost missed a customs inspection window. That wasn't me. That was a man falling apart. A buddy from Antwerp, Rick, flew in on a business trip, saw me, and didn't waste time. He drove me to a rehab center on Long Island that didn't care how much money I made, only whether I could stop bleeding inside long enough to stand up straight. I burned whatever savings I hadn't liquefied into alcohol and let them reset my brain. When I walked out weeks later, I was still cracked, but I was functional. And when I'm functional, I work. I tore into my roots, streamlined Antwerp to Basel, shifted my Dubai line to a different distributor. I fired a Jersey City middleman who'd been skimming small amounts that added up to real money. I rebuilt insurance tiers, renegotiated freight costs, and kept my head down. Discipline was the only thing that kept breath in my chest. Grief turned into a hum, constant, low frequency, like a bad light fixture. I lived with it. I made tea in the kettle she'd given me, sometimes touching the handle like I could feel warmth that wasn't there. I didn't date. I didn't celebrate holidays. I didn't buy a Christmas tree because I was tired of dragging something dead outside in January. 6 years slid by like that. I got older, not wiser, just heavier in the face. I worked hotel gyms during holidays and slept short. I convinced myself that routine was enough, until that envelope showed up. The day it landed in my lobby, all the noise I'd buried roared back. I tried to act like it didn't matter, like I was just working a case. But when I got back upstairs, my hands shook so hard I had to set the letter down twice before I opened it. When I read it, part of me wanted to believe. The other part, the side that had scraped itself back from the bottom, knew belief was how you get hurt. So I approached it the way I approach contraband routing or a suspect invoice. I treated it like a job. That night, I grabbed a pen, sat at the kitchen counter, and wrote a letter back. I kept my handwriting tight. I included the cash like they asked, $2,000, counted twice because habits die slow. But I laced the letter with 3 traps. I moved our first kiss to Hoboken instead of Montclair. I flipped who said dice on a string. I rewrote a fight we'd had in January and dropped it in March. If Bella wrote back knowing the original facts, I'd know someone was playing. If she matched my wrong ones, I'd know it was a basic scam. Either way, I'd stop pretending the dead talk to the living. When I was done, I folded everything into a plain envelope, put the bills inside, sealed it, and wrote nothing on the front. No name, no code, no tiger, no panda. I walked to Bay Ridge after dark, found the baseball field, and slipped the envelope under that loose board behind the backstop. I pressed it down with my palm so it wouldn't flutter out. Then I stood, brushed dirt off my hands, and walked away without checking if anyone watched. 4 days in, the envelope was gone. I checked the backstop every night for a week, just to be sure it wasn't a fluke. After a month of silence, I figured it was over. Scam artist took the cash and moved on. I told myself that was a win. Test passed, fire extinguished. But deep down, I was half pissed, half relieved. Then week 7 landed, and there it was again. Same thick envelope in my lobby box, same handwriting across the front. To my tiger, from Panda. No stamp, no smudge, just like the first. I stood there holding it, not breathing. I read it once leaning against the mailroom wall. Again over the sink while my tea went cold. Again in that stiff chair I never sit in near the window, like changing position might change the words. It was detailed, precise. Bella nailed every single trap. She corrected Newark to Clifton, reminded me it was her who coined the dice on a string joke, and pointed out that the Hoboken Pier fight was in April, not March, said I'd had a bad mood that didn't match the rain. Then came the slap. She scolded me for testing her, said she expected better, that she felt the doubt, and that it hurt. That was the moment the illusion cracked. Not because she got the details right, but because real Bella never scolded. She was cautious by nature. Suspicious first, soft later. This version, too smooth, too confident. Bella would have tested me back. This one acted like she'd passed the quiz, and now I owed her an apology. Then the ask, $5,500 for the medium's legal trouble. I read that sentence 3 times. The drop spot was near a closed swim school in Newark, some side street I didn't recognize, but someone local would. I sat there in my kitchen, elbows on the table, letter between my fingers like a confession. Bella never liked Newark after dark. She said it felt itchy, like something in the air was off. That itch started crawling through me again. I still wrote back. I still tucked in the $5,500 in cash, counted it slow, sealed the envelope. Then I waited until Tuesday night, because that's when they'd said to drop it. I parked 2 blocks from the swim school, near a busted speed limit sign, and walked with my collar up. I found the spot they named, between 2 yellow-painted curbs where the brick near the fence was chipped. I slid the envelope into the hollow, packed it in tight, and walked back to my car like I had nothing to hide. Then I waited. 2 hours passed. Cold pizza smell from the back seat. 1 stale protein bar. I sat with my eyes on the rear view, watching every person who walked by like they were carrying secrets. Then she came. Medium build, dark hoodie, fast step. She looked both ways, bent down, popped the exact brick, pulled the envelope, and started counting the cash before she even turned the corner. No hesitation. I knew the face. Took me a second, but I knew it. Christina Davis. The same woman who shut the shelter door in my face. Bella's friend. Same sharp stare, same stance, but now with her fingers frozen mid-count. "Christina," I said, stepping out from the car. She flinched. Her shoulders jerked back like she'd been hit. She turned slowly, stuffed the envelope into her coat, and opened her mouth. "Don't," I cut in. "Just don't. I'm tired. Don't make me drag this out." She looked like she might bolt, then deflated. "Please don't call the cops," she said, voice flat. "Please. I didn't want it to go this far." I stepped closer, keeping my tone steady. "Explain the perfume, the nicknames, the details." Her voice cracked but didn't break. Bella used to tell me things. Not all of it, but enough. I lived with her for almost 2 years before she passed. I heard stories, saw the notes. She made tea with that stupid kettle and talked about you like you were a movie that never ended. I asked about the scent. She said it was some cheap floral blend Bella always wore, and that she found the same bottle online and sprayed it on the envelopes because it helped her feel close. I didn't like that answer, but I believed it. Then she dropped the real story. She had a son, 3 years old. Name was Connor. Heart defect, truncus arteriosus. I didn't know the term, but she explained it fast, like someone who's said it 1,000 times and still hates every syllable. The meds aren't working right anymore, she said. Surgery estimates 86 grand. Could hit 112 with rehab. We don't have that kind of money. We don't have anything. I asked about the father. She looked down. Usher's out of work. He's mixed up with people he shouldn't be. He's trying to fix it, but nothing's sticking. Then she finally said it, like tearing off her own skin. I hate myself for using her name. I knew you had money. I knew you loved her. And I thought, maybe if it felt like Bella, you'd listen. I didn't hug her. I didn't scream either. I just stood there watching her hands tremble, and I said one thing. Give me a clean number. No more ghosts. Text me your son's cardiologist name in the morning. If you lie again, we're done. She nodded hard, sniffled once, wiped her nose with her sleeve. I took the envelope back, slid $1,000 out of my coat and handed it to her, bills wrapped in a rubber band. This gets you through the week. Rent, food, meds, nothing else. Don't show up at my place. Don't write another letter. I'll handle it. She took the money without a word, turned, walked fast, disappeared into the dark. That night I sat at my kitchen table until close to 2 in the morning. The kettle steamed in the corner. I didn't drink the tea. I made a list, because when I can't feel, I operate. Item 1. Call Columbia Presbyterian. Verify the diagnosis. Item 2. Confirm Dr. Patel's credentials. Item 3. Set a call with the bank to pre-clear any large outbound wires. Item 4. Figure out how much room I had left on my Dubai line before I spooked 2 suppliers. Then I sharpened a pencil, wrote Connor at the top of a fresh notepad, and underlined it twice. The next morning, I made the call. Dr. Patel's office picked up on the second ring. Polite voice. Knew Connor. Knew the diagnosis, the treatment plan. Even said they'd been trying to push his date up depending on a cancellation. I gave my name, asked what the balance looked like, and said I'd be handling all invoices moving forward. They didn't argue. Money opens doors. Back on my side, I queued the first wire, $35,000, pulled from a side reserve I normally didn't touch. My bank flagged it in under an hour for pattern adjustment. That's corporate for you're acting different than usual. They'd seen me move 6-figure shipments across borders, but never throw a chunk of change into the American healthcare void without a contract. I put on a clean shirt, got in the car, and drove to Midtown to handle it in person. Sat across from a compliance officer who looked about 25 and over-caffeinated. I laid out the documentation, printed the case summary, showed him Connor's surgical quote, and told him I wasn't buying a racehorse. I was trying to keep a kid breathing. They lifted half the freeze that afternoon. I split the payment across 2 wires and asked for an institutional fund to manage anything future-facing, rehab, medication, imaging. I named it Connor Davis Care A to keep it neat. No cash access, hospital invoices only. Christina didn't love that. Said she trusted herself more than she trusted systems. I told her I didn't. Not anymore. But it's for Connor, she said. And that's why it's structured, I shot back. He's the line item. Not you. Not me. She didn't fight after that. She texted a picture the next morning. Connor wrapped in a superhero blanket, big brown eyes, and a tired but real smile. I told myself you can fake a lot. That wasn't one of them. She added, I'll pay you back someday, I swear. I replied, then pay it forward, and stop writing letters like a ghost. She sent one word, okay, and stayed quiet for a while after that, which I appreciated. While that storm settled, another one kicked up across the globe. A buyer out of Hong Kong started wobbling, normally solid, 10-year relationship, suddenly getting cagey over a shipment we both knew was clean. At the same time, a Jersey City wholesaler named Darren Cole started sniffing around my junior staff. asking questions, poking at schedules, telling one of my vendors I was winding down and considering moving product through a flagged buyer overseas. My assistant forwarded a rumor from a supplier, said someone hinted I was touching gray market lanes in Dubai. That kind of talk spreads like mold. I locked my systems, moved 3 key clients to voice-only comms, told Antwerp I'd be flying out in 2 weeks to put hands on the table and steady the ship. I slept at the office 2 nights in a row because it was easier than trying to calm myself down in a dark apartment where nobody waited. I could smell the leftover fear from the letter game. It still clung to the corners of the kitchen. Christina kept me posted during all that. She said the meds were stable. The surgery date was finally on the board. She said she was scared and grateful. That's it. No fluff, no guilt. Simple was better. Late one afternoon in March, I wired another $15,000 to Colombia, took a call from Dubai, and stared at the unopened bourbon bottle in my office cabinet for a long minute. I thought about it, real hard. Then I made tea instead. It tasted like nothing but felt like something. 15 minutes later, someone pounded on my apartment door. Not a knock, a hit. 3 hard slams, then silence, then 2 more. Rhythmic, like they practiced it. "Gas check," a voice yelled through the wood. My brain clicked. The building had an issue last year, a faulty pilot line. The super was supposed to inspect quarterly. The tone sounded official, irritated. I opened the door. Bad move. 5 men shoved past me in a flash. Boots, caps, tool bags. One brushed my shoulder like I wasn't even there. Another walked straight toward the kitchen without asking. The last one, a tall guy with a limp, waited until I shut the door, then jabbed a thin blade up under my ribs. I didn't scream. Didn't have time. The air went out of me like I'd been unplugged. Heat spread fast, like I'd swallowed fire, and my knees buckled. I hit the floor sideways, vision bouncing. I saw one guy pulling my laptop, another grabbing the lockbox. Someone yanked a drawer full of invoices, then swore and dropped it. It didn't feel like a movie. No yelling, no gunshots, just chaos in short bursts, boots, zippers, grunts. The limp guy stepped over me twice. The second time, he nudged my leg with his boot hard, like checking if I was done. I didn't move. I let them think I was out cold. They were gone in under 10 minutes. I heard the front door slam, heard the stairwell door bang below that. Then nothing. Just my own heartbeat in my ears and the taste of blood on my teeth. I tried to sit up, couldn't. My hand reached for the phone on the coffee table. Missed. I slid sideways again. Somewhere in the fog, I saw a flashlight blink once, then disappear. I wasn't sure if I imagined it. The ceiling buzzed like it hated its job. That was the first thing I noticed. Then came the clean sheet smell and the steady beep that let me know I wasn't done yet. My side ached like fire, like someone had jammed a crowbar through me and changed their mind halfway in. A calm voice said, "Don't move too much. You're lucky." I turned my head slow. Male, mid-40s, scrubs, steady tone. "Puncture didn't hit anything vital," he continued. "Surgeons cleaned it up fast. You'll be sore, but clean work." I swallowed, throat raw. "Did I call 911? He shook his head. "Someone called from your phone. Just gave your address and hung up. No name. But it saved you minutes that mattered." I blinked against the light. The hum kept going. "There was a second lucky break," the doctor added. "Your blood type is AB negative. Not a lot of people walk around with that." "Yeah, I know." The hospital had just enough on hand to cover the operation, but someone showed up anyway, asked if you were alive, then signed paperwork to donate, replace what we used. That yanked me more awake than anything else had so far. He watched my face. "Look, compatibility doesn't prove relation, but with a rare type like yours, it's not the worst idea to check your family history." "I'm an only child," I said automatically. He didn't argue, just gave me a non-committal shrug, the kind men give when the math doesn't line up and they don't want to push. "He was arrested about an hour later," the doctor said. "Separate warrant. Name's Usher Davis. That hit like a bottle to the teeth. Davis. I knew it from Christina's texts, the way she never said it unless she had to. I stared at the blank ceiling while the rest clicked into place. The guy who helped set up the robbery might have also saved my life. Later, when I opened my eyes again, Christina was in the chair next to me. Her coat was still on. She looked like she hadn't slept, like her whole body was holding its breath. She didn't speak until I looked straight at her. "It was Usher's idea," she said. "The robbery. He thought you were flexing. He thought no one gives help without strings. He wanted to teach you a lesson." My jaw tightened, but I didn't speak. Not yet. She kept going. "The guy he pulled in, the one who ran the crew, is the kind of man who doesn't like loose ends. When things got messy and you went down, Usher panicked. Told them you were already gone. Said the place was a bust." I stared at her, still quiet. "He left with them," she said. "But he came back. I don't know why. Maybe he didn't believe it. Maybe he just needed to check for himself." She looked down at her hands. "He found you still breathing. Called 911 from your phone. Didn't leave a name. Then went to the hospital. Gave blood. Told the nurse, 'A debt's a debt.' That's what he said." Her voice broke, just a little. Nobody's ever done that for him before. I didn't answer. Didn't curse her out. Just let the silence stretch while the angry part of me did math. What I could charge him with. What I could file. What I could strip away. Then came the other part, uglier in its own way. The part that hates unfinished debt. That wants to understand why someone would do both. Bleed you and save you. The doctor came back that night. He checked my vitals, asked about pain, then circled back to the blood type. "Donor paperwork lined up," he said. "Compatible. AB negative's rare enough that we log everything twice." I nodded. He looked at me longer than he had to. "You know there's a photo in the hallway? Outside the staff lounge. From a Red Cross drive. 10, maybe 11 years back." "What about it?" He scratched his jaw. "Guy in it looks a lot like you. Just rougher. Beard. Jacket. A few people asked if it was you. I said no. But now I'm not sure." He didn't press. Just walked out. The next day I asked to see my parents. In the meantime, I turned to Christina. She was still in the corner, eyes half closed like she'd been expecting me to explode and didn't know how to handle the delay. "You need to go home," I told her. "Get Connor to his checkup. Stop apologizing." She opened her mouth to argue. "Not right now," I cut her off. "We'll talk when it makes sense. Not now." She nodded, pulled her coat tighter and left without another word. I stayed behind in that room alone, watching the patterns on the ceiling tile. The dots didn't move, but I counted them anyway. I made up my mind right there. I'd handle this like I handle everything, step by step, verify the facts, move the least risky piece first. No sudden moves. No one dies if I can help it. And if the past decided to walk through my front door dressed in my blood type, then I'd deal with that too. I checked myself out of the hospital on day 6, not day 8 like they wanted. I didn't wait on clearance or sign off. I got dressed slow, winced through it, and called a car to Long Island. When I got to my folks' place, I didn't even sit down. I walked straight into the garage where the old paint cans and broken holiday lights live, and opened the crate where my dad keeps boxes of Polaroids he never throws out. He walked in behind me, wiping his hands on a towel like he thought this was about oil changes. "Dad," I said, already flipping through a stack, "you ever have another kid?" He froze mid-step. My mom was behind him a few seconds later, and she went stiff like someone had clicked a switch in her neck. "No," she said fast. Too fast. My dad stared at the cement floor for a while, then scratched behind his ear like he was trying to buy time from the wall. "There was a girl," he said, "back in Queens. Her name was Denise." He paused, then added, "She left. Said I wasn't city enough. Might have been pregnant." I wouldn't know. Never heard from her again. I nodded once and went back to the box. They didn't ask why I was digging. Later that afternoon, he was out in the driveway smoking like he used to do before Mom started pretending she hated the habit. I stayed in the garage, still flipping, when I hit a photo that stopped me cold. My dad was leaning against a pole outside some bar in Woodside, arm around a woman with hard cheekbones and eyes that didn't blink. She looked like Usher. That was enough. Not a blood test, not a signature, but enough for me to put a thumbtack in the timeline and accept that blood finds its way back to the same door, invited or not. I called Isabel Mercado the next morning. She was the kind of lawyer you hired when you wanted someone with no time for theater. Her shoes clicked loud. Her emails were short. She took one look at the case, skimmed the report, and said, "He's not going to walk unless someone credible stands up for him." I said, "He helped save my life." She raised an eyebrow. "That'll work." In court, Usher looked worn down, but stood taller than I expected. He pled to burglary, took full weight for the setup, denied intent to kill, which I knew was true because if he'd wanted me gone, I wouldn't be standing. The DA came in hot, wanted to bury him, pushed hard on the repeat offender angle, called it organized crime, even though the crew boss was the only one with a real record. Isabel called me to the stand. I told the truth. Said the call to 911 came from my phone. Said a man donated rare blood on site that matched mine. Said he stayed long enough to make sure I didn't crash. Then I looked Usher straight in the face and said it loud enough for the whole room. "You did one right thing, do another." The judge watched him like a hawk. Everyone held their breath. Then the sentence landed. Time served. 5 years probation. Mandatory rehab and anger management. Strict curfew. Job placement. The crew boss got a multi-year hit and a lifetime bar from logistics permits. Justice doesn't balance clean, but that day, it leaned just enough. Outside the courthouse, gray sky pressing low, Usher lit a cigarette with fingers that shook a little. He looked at me like he wasn't sure which version of me he was facing. "I can lift," he said, "but I can't wear a tie." I cracked half a smile. "I don't need a tie. I need someone who'll show up and not let me down." He nodded once. Didn't offer thanks. I didn't want it. "I'm setting up a logistics course through Marlin from Antwerp," I told him. "You start there, then we see." He looked down at his hands, then over at Christina, who stood off to the side, holding Connor like she was afraid the moment would shift if she breathed wrong. I said, "You lie once, you're done. You steal, you're done. You show up drunk, you're done." He didn't flinch. "I'll try." We shook hands. That was it. No hugs, no big speeches, just a dry handshake on concrete. A few months later, he was running the warehouse clock better than anyone I'd had in 5 years. He showed up early, stayed late, put out 2 fires before they made it to my desk. Didn't talk much, didn't miss a step. I told my parents about the blood type thing one night while we sat in their kitchen. Mom didn't say anything at first. She just put her arms around me and held on longer than usual. Dad stared past me like he was seeing both the past and the version of himself he almost became. He didn't ask for proof. He didn't need to. No one said, "Brother, you don't have to say it when the blood already knows." That night, I went home to my place in Brooklyn. First time I'd slept in my bed in weeks without waking up to the ghost of a hospital light in my eyes. No alarms, no sirens, just the hum of the fridge and the tea kettle I still hadn't replaced. That kind of quiet, that's peace in my language. Work crawled at first. Nothing broke, but nothing moved easy either. I watched orders stall, vendors hesitate, even Marlin from Antwerp take 2 days to answer a simple pricing question. I didn't blame them. Word gets around. The moment someone smells blood, they test the waters. Usher showed up early, stayed late, missed a few quiz answers in the logistics training, but he kept showing up. That mattered more. I paired him with Marlin directly, got him on inventory control so he'd learn SKUs before he learned politics. Marlin didn't love it, but he respected schedules. Usher matched him, beat for beat. I went back to Columbia twice. Once for billing updates, once to sign authorization for surgical access. The day of Connor's operation, I sat in a hallway that smelled like bleach and vending machine coffee, flipping through a report on export duties for uncut pearls, just to give my hands something to do. 4 hours in, the surgeon walked out, mask still hanging from one ear, and said the words I didn't know I needed. Procedure went as planned. Strong prognosis. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice. Just nodded. That night I set up the Bella Lane Fund. Simple name. Quiet purpose. Medical or travel assistance for foster kids who got kicked in the teeth by life and didn't have a parent left to fight for them. No big press. No speech. Just a $50,000 wire and a signed charter. I stapled the bank receipt to the back of the folder and filed it under non-negotiables. Back at the office, Darren Cole kept circling. He didn't hit me direct. Too slippery for that. But 2 vendors said he was floating a story that I'd moved stones through a flagged buyer. Nothing direct, just smoke. Jealousy always carries the stink of desperation. But this one had teeth. A compliance officer from the bank called me on a Thursday, said they needed more documentation on a Hong Kong to Dubai reroute. I handed it over same day. Then I bookmarked every name who'd accessed the shipment folder. Darren wasn't subtle, but he wasn't invisible either. Christina dropped by once with Connor, now stitched and smiling like a kid who didn't understand just how close he'd come. He handed me a drawing, crayon, folded, bent at the corners, a tiger and a panda. He said, "Mom said this is you and Auntie Bella." I didn't say anything, just took it and slipped it into my side drawer. Not the center one. That felt too exposed. A week later, Usher brought me a photo from an old album. Denise, his mom, standing next to a guy in a zip-up jacket with a slouch in his stance that matched my father's exactly. It wasn't proof, but it didn't need to be. We both looked at it, then looked away. "You want to run a test?" he asked. "No," I said. "We'll let the ghosts sleep." He nodded once. That was the last we spoke of it. By late summer, we were scouting a second showroom space in Long Island City. Nothing flashy, just a clean front, 3-room layout, secure drop door, and decent walk-in access. I made the usual list: lease terms, alarm systems, insurance riders. I told myself not to work 7 days in a row. Didn't always listen, but I said it out loud, and that counted for something. Some nights I still talked to Bella. Quietly, usually while rinsing the kettle. I'd tell her about Connor's crayon, about Usher hitting quota 3 weeks in a row, about the new fund, and how I'd kept her name off the public paperwork like she would have wanted. I told her I'd been sleeping most nights, that I was trying. I asked her if she'd hate me for trying again. I waited, but she didn't answer. She never did. Late September, I drove to the Nutley Cemetery with a small wrap of ranunculus and thistle. She always said thistle made the soft flowers feel tougher. I knelt. Didn't say much. Just told her about the fund. Left the wrap. Stood up and walked away feeling settled, not fixed. The next morning, janitorial staff for the new showroom bailed. Agency said their guy got reassigned. I didn't argue. I just told them to send someone else for the night shift and hung up. That evening, just before closing, a woman showed up. Tall, dark hair pulled back, plain shirt, tool bag slung over one shoulder. "Violet Powell," she said, "here for the cleaning shift." She didn't ask questions, didn't offer a story, just asked where to start. I pointed to the back storage and said, "Anywhere you want, long as it ends with the front looking better than it did." 30 minutes in, I heard a loud click, then silence. I walked to the break room door and found her crouched by the exit, tightening the hinge with a small socket wrench. "That thing's been loose for a week," I said. She looked up, deadpan. "I noticed. You got a lot of people pretending not to." Then she went back to work. Violet didn't talk much the first few days, but when she did, it was straight. no filler. She was 26, ran night shifts in an office complex off Queens Boulevard, took the Long Island City job because the timing fit her bus schedule. She looked at me like I was just another nameplate, which I liked. Gave her instructions. She nodded once and got to it. No lip, no flinch. The kind of worker who doesn't ask twice unless it matters. 1 week in, she knocked on my door around noon. I was mid-call with Antwerp and waved her in, expecting a mop issue or a broken fixture. Instead, she stepped in like she meant it, eyes sharp, phone in hand. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I'm not sure how you'll take it." I ended the call and gave her the floor. She said she'd been cleaning the small conference room the night before. Heard voices, 2 guys whispering, low but sloppy. They didn't see her. Said something about a coal plan, a setup meant to rattle my bank and wedge a client loose. She hit record when she realized they weren't just blowing smoke. 1 minute of audio, names, dates, reference to a fake sanctions alert sent through a burner domain targeting the bank's AML filters. She handed me the phone, then said something that caught me hard. "I'm sorry for hearing it. I know most people treat cleaners like furniture." I played the clip. Clean quality. 2 voices. One of them laughing while he said, "Just drop the link and wait. They'll freeze the whole chain. Guy'll panic. Clients'll scatter. Darren said it works." My jaw set. The names were easy. 2 temps from a service we'd tested twice. One had been at a trade show Darren Cole spoke at 6 months back. All the dots connected too clean to ignore. I called Isabel Mercado. She barely said hello before asking what I had. I forwarded the audio, gave her the folder, and let her run it to legal. We sent it to the bank's internal security lead. I ate the early cancellation fee on a Dubai reroute that afternoon, just to keep the risk low. Then I pulled both temps into the office with HR. I didn't yell. Didn't have to. I just asked them to explain the voices in the recording. People usually tell on themselves when they're caught. They did. That night, I sat at my desk longer than usual and made a new list. Not of risks, not of routes, just names. People who save your life in ways that don't show up in a blood test or medical chart. The guy who calls 911 from your phone. The kid who draws you a tiger. The woman who hears what you missed and doesn't pretend she didn't. The next night I caught Violet before she left, asked if she had 10 minutes for coffee across the street. She hesitated. I saw it happen. Shoulders stiffen, eyes scan for a catch. I get it. A man with gray hair and a nice watch asking for just a cup is usually lying. So I said, "No pressure. Doesn't mean anything. I just want to say thank you." She nodded slow. 1 cup. We sat in a booth with cracked vinyl and weak lighting. Talked about siblings. She helped raise her younger sister. Took night classes before her mom got sick. Said she didn't want anything from me except clean hours and no drama. "You've got both," I said, "far as I can promise." A week later, after the bank closed the file and Darren's name got flagged back at him, I asked Violet to dinner. But I didn't lead with the invitation. I said, "I'm not trying to replace a ghost. I just need to say that out loud so I'm not a coward." She didn't blink. "I'm not a replacement. I wouldn't try to be." Then she added, "I don't do fancy." So we went to a diner in Astoria, split a slice of pie, talked about what we wanted 5 years from now and what we were afraid we'd never get. I didn't sleep great that night. Not because of her. Because new things make old bones jumpy. Especially ones that don't come with disclaimers or secret codes. 2 months later, I told her the worst of my drunk season. The floor sleeping. The rehab. The letter I answered like a fool. And I told her the best of Bella. She nodded once, didn't ask for more. She said, "I don't need a monument in the house. I need a man who shows up when he says he will." I said, "I can do that. Most days." The next 12 months didn't move fast. They moved right. The kind of right that stays even when the lights are off. Darren's fallout landed mid-February. We had one more court date. I sat in the back row, clean shirt, arms crossed. The bank's security lead laid it out plain. Our controls flagged a fake sanctions ping tied to a third-party burner. The judge barely blinked. Sometimes you let the system do what it's built for. That day, it actually did. Usher had a smaller hearing a week later, final piece of his wrap-up. He took the mic, not looking at anyone at first, stared down at his shoes like they owed him answers. He walked the judge through what happened, his fault, his choices, then said one more thing. He said, "A man saved my son and hired me after I robbed him. I won't waste either." I didn't flinch. Neither did the judge. When they called me up, I kept it tight. I would have died from blood loss in my own office if a transfusion hadn't landed fast. A man with no reason to help chose to show up. I don't forget things like that. Then I turned to Usher and added, "Thank you." Whole room went still. Shouldn't be rare for men to thank each other straight, but it still is. We left that building, didn't talk about the hearing. Drove straight to my parents' place for a barbecue that landed somewhere between awkward and warm. One of those days where everyone knows something but doesn't say it. Dad pulled out old music. Usher fixed a jammed storm door without being asked. Mom brought out a second plate like it meant nothing. That was the whole conversation. It worked. Violet kept cleaning at night until April, then stepped into a part-time vendor management role. She didn't miss the mop, but she said it covered tuition for one semester, and I respected that more than I can say. No shortcuts, no ego. I proposed after we closed a strong quarter. No flash. Just takeout at the kitchen counter, a ring in a small box, and me saying, "I'm not trying to go back. I'm trying to go forward." She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Then don't stop showing up."